Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Judaism and Christianity, a contrast with Rabbi Stuart, the man Federow from the Big H, Houston, Texas. Welcome back, my dear friend.
Here.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am excited and happy to be here with you, for sure. So, very good. So, yeah, this will be a fun one tonight. It's the Jewish roots of Christianity.
As if there were any.
I can tell you, as an ex-Christian, I never knew there was anything Jewish about Christianity until much later on, and so it'll be interesting for new viewers out here to experience and see exactly what is what, and we'll kind of go with that. So welcome back, and thank you all for tuning in. If you see anything alarming or hear anything alarming, send me a message, like the speakers going too loud, too crazy. A lot of you ask questions about the sound spikes, and it's just whenever it's going live, I can't control that. I set the volumes to the perfect level, what seems to be perfect on the side, and without touching them halfway through the show, you'll hear it climb and drop and climb and drop. My hands aren't touching anything, and I never know until it's too late. And I did do a poll. I realize I'm not on the screen. Too busy talking. I did do a poll to find out how many people would rather me edit the video to get the sound right, and I was actually quite astonished that over 80% said just leave the videos alone, and so I did. So that's kind of what we do, unless it's like really so bad it's causing issues. So that's how we're moving forward on that. But anyway, again, thank you, Rabbi, for joining us here, and really excited about Really excited about your Hebrew Jumpstart video.
That is all you.
Gaining some serious traction.
William, that is all you.
Well, people out there are sharing it as well, which is really helpful. In fact, the more people that share it.
Yes, but if you hadn't turned it into an animation.
Oh, that part.
Okay, this is you. This is your work, the fruit of your work. Okay, couldn't have happened without you.
It still is the same thing even without the animation, and some people would prefer to see you doing all that instead of just so don't take away from yourself, because your delivery was brilliant.
Deeply appreciate it.
Well, I sure appreciate you letting me work on it, that's for sure.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to pass this on along to you and let you get this thing rolling.
Okay, so my next chapter is called The Jewish Roots of Christianity, or is Christianity based on Judaism or whatever.
Right.
The answer is no. Okay. However, there is a somewhat new technique to get Jews to convert to Christianity, and that's to make Jewish targets believe that they have not left Judaism by converting to Christianity, and that one can be a Jew and a Christian at the same time. And the way in which this is accomplished is to couch Christian beliefs in Jewish practices, to give Jewish rituals a Christian spin, a Christian interpretation, so that the targets can continue to appear and to act Jewishly, but what they are now doing is understood through Christian theological interpretations, through Christian colored glasses. And let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning of an organization in San Francisco called the American Board of Missions to the Jews. And it was headed by a Baptist minister by the name of Martin my mind just went blank. Martin Rosen. He was ordained a Baptist minister 12 years before this occurred. And he established the San Francisco, actually in Haight-Ashbury, the center of hippiedom. He established the American Board of Missions to the Jews offices in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. And somewhere along the line, according to his organization's website about 20, 30 years ago, now it's, of course, changed and taken down and can't be found. But once upon a time, I actually had copies of his website. But he was reading a book by a guy named Donald McGavran called Understanding Church Growth. And in Donald McGavran's book called Understanding Church Growth, which is about how to increase the membership of your church, increase conversions to Christianity from target communities, Donald McGavran has a section called the sociology of missology, which is like a sociological approach to converting people. And in that section of his book, Understanding Church Growth, he said that basically, if you've got a group of people as your target and they have a specific identity, then you have to figure out what is it about Christianity that makes them afraid of losing the identity that they are a part of. And it had absolutely nothing to do with the Jewish community. He was actually talking about, I believe, a community in the Pacific Islanders. And what he suggested was remove all obstacles that you can figure out are stopping this group of ethnic that identify themselves either ethnically or however, remove all obstacles from them so that they can continue to feel a part of their ethnic group, part of what they attach themselves to, their identity, and still nevertheless convert to Christianity. Martin Rosen took that to heart. And what he did was he removed all visual symbols that the American Board of Missions to the Jews offices in Haight-Ashbury and San Francisco were in fact Christian. So he got rid of all crucifixes, all crosses. He started referring to things, people, places by their Jewish names, not their Christian names. So he never talked about Mary. He talked about Miriam. He didn't talk about Joseph. He talked about Yosef. He didn't talk about the cross. He talked about the tree. In other words, his vocabulary removed the Christian connotations, and the target audience, the Jews, could say, "Well, now they're using the Hebrew," and so Moshe Rosen eventually changed his own name from Martin Rosen, Baptist minister, to Moshe Rosen to sound Jewish. Now, he claims to have been born and raised a Jew, and I'm sure that may be correct. But as we've discussed in another chapter of my book, you can't be Jewish and Christian at the same time, even though that's what his organization started to put forth. He changed the American Board of Missions to the Jews to the Jews for Jesus. And this attitude spilled over into certain groups of Christianity where they wanted to reclaim the Jewishness of Jesus. So this chapter in my book really isn't about the Hebrew Christians, the Messianic Jews, the Jews for Jesus, whatever you want to call them this week. Okay, this is really about a group of people who try to see the Jewish roots of Christianity and therefore feel closer to the Jewishness of Jesus, they think. But it's still a technique to missionize the Jews. It's still a technique to get Jews to become Christian, and that's how it developed. So not the Jews themselves, but the Christian missionaries themselves justify their using Jewish symbols to make themselves look Jewish so that they can gain converts to Christianity. Okay, they rely on Paul, okay, to show that. Okay, so let me let's take a look at some of the things that Paul wrote that indicate his willingness to be deceptive. I will remind you, however, what it says in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16 and 19. 6 things the Eternal hates. We talk about God's love, but God also has certain things that he hates. These 6 things does the Eternal hate. 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, and a heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that are swift in running to do mischief, a false witness that speaks lies, and he that sows discord among brethren. Or Proverbs 12, verse 20. Deceit is in the heart of them that imagine evil, but to the counselors of peace is joy. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22. Lying lips are an abomination to the eternal, but they that deal truly are God's delight. So now we come to Romans chapter 3, verse 7. Paul writes, "For if the truth of God has more abounded through my lie unto his glory, why yet am I also judged as a sinner?" What he is saying is that the ends justify the means. And he's saying here that if the truth of God become increased by his lying about it, then why would you judge him as a sinner? Because it increases the faith in God. Christians will counter and say, oh no, you misunderstand what Romans 3:7 is about. Paul is quoting people and then showing where they're wrong. Yeah, that might be true, but look at all the other stuff that Paul wrote. So, for example, in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 20 to 22, this especially is used by Christian missionaries themselves to justify, to rationalize their deceptive practices. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 20 to 22, Paul wrote, "See, unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without law, as without law, being not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain those that are without law. To the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some." So here he's saying that it's okay to pretend to be a Jew to the Jews in order to get Jews to become Christians. And that is the reasoning based on 1 Corinthians 9:20 that missionaries themselves will quote to justify their deceptive practices. To become a Jew to the Jews, that I might gain the Jews. Now, in Philippians chapter 1, verse 18, what did Paul write? "What then? Notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therein do rejoice, yea, and will rejoice." So he's making a juxtaposition between pretense and truth, and whether he uses pretense or truth, if it gets people to become Christian, that's okay. He'll rejoice in their becoming Christian, no matter how he does it. Okay? These quotations indicate more than just simply Romans chapter 3, verse 7, but a basic attitude that Paul had, that the ends justify the means, and if that means using deceit, that's exactly what he will do in order to be able to get anybody, but really the target of the Christians is to get Jews to convert. So I want you to do me a favor, and it takes time and it's a lot of effort, but I want you to get online and I want you to look up the Southern Baptist Convention. When you look up the Southern Baptist Convention, okay, I want you to take a look at an area on the Southern Baptist Convention's website, which is about their beliefs. What do they believe? I want you to pull it up, glance over it, see what it says. Then I want you to take a look at the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America, MJAA, and the Union of Hebrew Christian Congregations, or UMJC, Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. Now, I can't remember, but UMJC may have changed its name again. But at any rate, the point is that in all three of these places, the Southern Baptist Convention, the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America, and the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations, take a look at each one of their beliefs, how they describe what they believe. And what you will find is that there's no difference between what the Baptists say and what the Messianics say. The only difference you're going to find, subtle differences, but the only major difference blaring out at you that you're going to find is that on the Messianic websites, they'll just change it with Jewish words. I believe that Jesus is the third of the Trinity. I believe Yeshua is the third of the Trinity. I mean, it will be that explicit. They say basically the same thing, but the Messianic ones make what they believe sound Jewish. Okay? Were you to compare the theology of the Jews for Jesus organization and that of Messianic Jews with the theology of the Southern Baptist Convention, you're not going to see much of a difference. So compare them and you will see that the same thing. By the way, you can also see the same thing, by the way, if you go to any individual Baptist church and look at their beliefs and compare it with the Messianics. Or go look at the Assemblies of God and Assemblies of God church and look at their beliefs and compare it with the Messianics. You're just not going to see that it's really different, but the Messianic ones will make it appear that what they believe remains Jewish because they give it Jewish flavors. Okay? This technique that you can remain a Jew even when you accept the theology of Christianity and become a Christian is proposed in what Christians call indigenous cultural evangelism, which says that as long as a missionary makes the targets think they can be both a Christian and whatever they were before their conversion, then missionizing them will be easier. Okay. That's what happens when Christians teach something that they call the Jewish roots of Christianity. And you may think that the Jewish roots refers to the Christian idea that Christianity developed out of Judaism, or that Christianity is based on the Hebrew Scriptures, or that the first Christians were Jews. That's not how it works. Let me tell you a story. David had a beautiful garden in which he grew the most beautiful and perfect tomatoes. One day, David's friend Matthew planted cucumbers right in the middle of David's garden of tomatoes. Eventually, when the cucumbers sprouted, Matthew claimed that the tomatoes were the roots of his cucumbers. In other words, he said the cucumbers developed from the tomatoes and were the natural result, the goal of the tomatoes as they grew to maturity. Now that may seem ridiculous, but it actually represents accurately the claims of many people who teach the Jewish roots of Christianity. They plant Christian cucumbers, so to speak, in the midst of Jewish tomatoes, and then claim that what they planted there sprouted naturally from what is already growing there. In other words, they put a Christian theological interpretation onto a Jewish ceremony, a Jewish ritual, a Jewish holiday, a Jewish life cycle event, and then they claim that now that they have interpreted what was Jewish in a Christian way, now that they claim that this planted Christian theological interpretation is now found in something Jewish because it was planted by them there in the first place, it proves that there are Jewish roots to Christianity. Absolute, unadulterated nonsense, and shows the length to which many will go to obtain Jewish legitimacy and to make it look like what these Christians are doing is Jewish. Okay, we have Passover. On this day that we are making this video, Passover is actually starting in just a few days. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but let's talk about it. During the Jewish holiday of Passover, there are usually 3 pieces of matzah placed on the Seder plate or on its own plate. During the Seder, the middle matzah is taken out, broken in half, broken in 2, and one of these 2 pieces, which is called the afikomen, is then hidden and then brought out at the end of the meal. Some Christians will claim that the matzah, as well as the ritual of the afikomen, is symbolic of Jesus, and therefore indicates that the basic theology of Christianity can be found in Jewish rituals, and therefore it shows the Jewish roots of Christianity. They claim that the 3 pieces of matzah represent the Trinity. You have 3 pieces, the Father, the Son, notice it's in the middle, and the Holy Spirit. So you take out the middle matzah, which we just said is the Son out of the Trinity. It is broken, which they say is being crucified, or is a shadow of being crucified. It is hidden, which means it's like Jesus's body was buried, and then brought back out to be used, which is the resurrection. They will also point out that the matzah we use today has stripes and lines of holes. And the same Christians, the stripes and holes indicate the Jewish roots of Christianity, because the stripes and holes, they'll say, represent the marks on Jesus from the scourging he received, and the holes represent those on Jesus that were caused by the crucifixion. There's a great big problem with this, and shows that this explanation, this spin that they put on the Jewish rituals and symbols are just simply nonsense. In the days of Jesus, there was no Seder, there was no Haggadah, there was no 3 pieces of matzah, there was no Seder plate to put the 3 matzahs on at the time of Jesus. Jesus lived during the existence of the temple. And according to Exodus 12:8, there were 3 symbols, and that's all that was needed for the observance of Passover. The Passover lamb, the unleavened bread, and the bitter herbs. Jesus sent his disciples to get the lamb for the Passover lamb. It talks about a certain kind of bread that he had, and never says a word about bitter herbs. And it would have been very easy to have taken the bitter herbs and used that in the Christian New Testament as a symbol for the suffering or whatever of Jesus. But they're absent, they're missing. It was only after the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70, so if Jesus died in 33, we're talking 37 years later, almost 2 complete generations later of 20 years each. Okay, probably closer to 3 generations because people married earlier back then. So at least 2 generations later, after the destruction of the temple, the rabbis invented the whole Seder as a way of telling the story and celebrate Passover, because they could no longer do it because the temple had been destroyed. They turned the going to the temple to get the Passover lamb into a home celebration. Jesus wouldn't have known anything about charoset. Jesus wouldn't have known anything about dipping parsley or greenery into salt water. Okay? The ritual to observe the Jewish holiday of Passover, especially as we know the ritual today, developed years and years and years after Jesus was dead and buried. If you take a look at the original discussions of Passover and how to do the ritual in the Mishnah, you will see that it describes the use of only 1 1/2 of a piece of matzah. Originally, it was the half piece that was broken in half, and one of these 2 pieces, which means now we're talking about 1/4 of an original piece of matzah, was set aside to be eaten at the last part of the meal. It wasn't hidden. All they did was set it aside, remaining in plain sight. The idea of hiding the afikomen originated in the middle 1600s in Germany, because the German Jews were watching their children fall asleep in the middle of the meal. And to keep the children interested in the service, they created the idea of hiding the afikomen so that the kids could find it, and the kid who found it would get a prize. So eventually, the idea of hiding the afikomen and then having the kids search for it as a contest caught on throughout the Jewish world. The other thing, remember they said the stripes and holes on the matzah represent the stripes and holes in Jesus. Okay, the reason why there's stripes and holes in matzah is because the vast majority of matzah is made by a machine. And the machine causes the stripes and the holes as it pulls the dough through the machine with these like pins, like my fingers are imitating. The machine was invented only about 150 years ago in the middle 1800s. How do you have a foreshadowing of the death of Jesus in something that developed long after Jesus died? You can't foreshadow something that came before it. The matzah represents Jesus is only a Christian interpretation, but that's what Christians do in order to create this illusion of the Jewish roots of Christianity. Of course, hey, Christian missionaries and those who want to believe that Christianity originated from Judaism can interpret anything they want to, any way they want to, any verse in the Bible, and any verse they want to, they can interpret it any way they want to. But that doesn't mean Christianity developed from the things that they're interpreting. If this were the case, then why don't we apply that same logic to something else, like pizza? Pizza has three basic elements. It has bread, it has tomato sauce, and it has cheese. Basic pizza has three elements: bread on the bottom, tomato sauce, and then cheese. The middle element is the tomato sauce, which is red. You could easily provide a Christian basis for these three definitive elements of pizza by saying the three basic ingredients of pizza represent the Trinity. It's three. So let's start with the bread. Jesus himself called himself the bread of life, John chapter 6, verse 35. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He that comes to me shall never hunger, and he that believes on me shall never thirst. So pizza dough has to be kneaded, and the image of kneading the dough parallels the beating Jesus received prior to his crucifixion. The pizza dough is then rolled over with an instrument which pokes holes in it to remove any air, paralleling Jesus receiving the holes in his body from the crucifixion, just like they claim is represented in the matzah. So the first layer of bread is on the bottom. The second layer is the tomato sauce. Hey, the sauce is red like Jesus' blood. It's spread on the dough in the same way the blood of a sacrifice is placed on an altar. Well, that's not really true, but that's what Christians say. And finally, you have the third level of the cheese. The cheese covers the rest of the pizza like the death of Jesus covers the sins of the people. So it's easy to take something like pizza and give it a Christian spin. So this explanation demonstrates how anything, even pizza, can be used to symbolize Jesus. So if pizza can be used to symbolize Jesus, does that mean that the symbolism found in pizza proves the pizza roots of Christianity? If you can have the Jewish roots, the Hebrew roots of Christianity, and I can show you reflections of Jesus in pizza, maybe there are pizza roots of Christianity. No. So Christians will say, oh, wait a minute, Rabbi, the first Christians were Jews. Well, first of all, just because a person is Jewish doesn't mean that what a Jew creates is a Jewish thing. Okay, so Jonas Salk and Kinley was first name Sabin invented the vaccine for polio. So does that mean the vaccine is Jewish? Just because Jews create something doesn't mean that what they create is Jewish. And I got news for you, I'm very sorry to say. Just because a person is a Jew doesn't mean that they know anything about Judaism, and what they create, therefore, may or may not have anything whatsoever to do with Judaism, or what they create may represent something that isn't Jewish that they claim really is. You see that on television all the time. I have seen television shows that will invent rituals, invent holidays, and call them a Jewish holiday just so they can get a laugh from the audience. Okay, so Christians will say, weren't the first Christians actually Jews? Well, that's true, but that's irrelevant. The first Protestants were Roman Catholics. Martin Luther, who invented the church denomination called Lutheran, was a Roman Catholic priest. So do Roman Catholics consider Lutherans to be Catholics? Roman Catholics do not consider Protestant Christianity to be another form of Roman Catholicism, and they certainly don't say, oh, well, the goal of Roman Catholicism was to become Protestantism. Like they say that the goal of Judaism is to believe in Jesus. And Catholics do not consider Protestants to be completed Roman Catholics, like Christians insultingly call ex-Jews who have now become Christians completed Jews. Well, he was Roman Catholic, but now he's a completed Roman Catholic because he's a Baptist. Let me show you something. Okay, a few months ago, we had the holiday of Hanukkah. And if you read the apocryphal book of First Maccabees, you will see that the first person killed in the Maccabees rebellion was a fellow Jew. You got to remember that when the Syrian soldiers were sent to the little bitty towns to get an elder of the city to worship Zeus, and they came to Modi'in, where the Mattathias and his family lived, and they went to Mattathias and they said, we want you to sacrifice a pig to Zeus, and he refused. They didn't kill him because they knew they could find another Jew to go ahead and do the sacrifice of a pig to Zeus. So they find another Jew, another elder of the city, who obviously must have been very secular and very assimilated into Hellenist Greco-Roman culture, and he was going to sacrifice the pig to Zeus. But Mattathias attacks him, kills him. So what would have happened if Mattathias' attack on this guy, this other Jew, did not kill that Jew? He survived the attack against him and later formed a religion dedicated to the worship of Zeus and Zeus's half-human sons, like Hercules, Perseus, whose mothers were human but whose father was Zeus. What happens if the guy who survived Mattathias' attack against him in Modi'in survived the attack and created a religion dedicated to the worship of Zeus and Zeus's half-human sons? Would that make his newly formed faith another form of Judaism? After all, he was also Jewish. Maybe he should call that faith Jews for Zeus, or maybe he should call it Jews for Zeus's half-human sons. Would that make it a faith with Jewish roots because it was a Jew who created it? Obviously not. Just because a person is a Jew does not mean that everything he or she does or believes in is Jewish. There are no roots of Christianity that are Jewish, because the theology that supports Christianity and from which it is derived is antithetical to what the Bible says, which we've discussed in other chapters of my book and which we have already discussed on these videos. The beliefs of Christianity are diametrically opposite of what Judaism believes and what the Bible says, and has far more in common with the pagan idolatry of the Hellenist and Roman dying, saving man gods than with anything found in the Hebrew Scriptures, except, of course, where Christians wish to give the Hebrew Scriptures their Christian interpretation and their Christian spin. There are no Jewish roots of Christianity. Christianity was founded by people who knew more about the pagan idolatry of the Greco-Roman world than they knew anything about Judaism, as we have discussed in other chapters of my book, as we've discussed in other videos. So that's basically it.
Right. So basically, I think from what I understand is if Christianity if mainstream Christianity comes from anything at all, it's going to be from the Roman Catholic Church. That would be the mother.
Right.
The mother,
but where did Roman Catholicism from? Where did the earliest church come from?
I will say that Catholicism has more visually Jewish things about them than any others do.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's I don't know what the statistics are now, William. I don't know what they are now, but it used to be that the majority of people converting to Judaism were actually Roman Catholic. There were a lot more Roman Catholics abandoning Catholicism and coming to Judaism than there were from all the various thousands of Protestant church denominations.
right.
I don't think that's true anymore, but I don't have a way of finding out. And I only vaguely remember that it was true about more Roman Catholics converting to Judaism, probably because Roman Catholicism went through a phase where they lost a lot of their following. But, this idea of the Jewish roots of Christianity is just a fallacy to make people feel Jewish.
Right.
But what is Jewish is defined by the Jews. It's not defined by ex-Jews who are now Christians. It's not defined by Christians who are wannabe Jews. It's not defined by Messianic Jews, who want to feel Jewish by doing Jewish things. Everything that's Jewish is defined by the Jews. So, they can give their Christian spins. This world is a free world and people are free to do whatever they want. But the knowledgeable Jews And now the people who now know better from watching these videos, they're not going to be fooled.
Yeah, right. Just like they use the characteristics, the visual characteristics of the matzah to explain
they do
how
that to
Jesus.
everything.
They do it, especially with the Torah scrolls. They'll say that that it's stitched together is because Jesus was pierced, and the scribed lines were where he was striped, and it's really.
I did it with pizza. You can do it with anything.
Yeah, right.
Anything
exactly.
can be spun.
Right.
Okay, and give it a Christian way.
Very true.
Okay,
Yep.
I am looking at my computer, screen, keyboard, mouse, Trinity.
Nice.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anything can be given that spin.
Yep, that's very true. Very true.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think last week we had like almost an hour and a half show, so we'll offsetting this week to about a 40-minute show.
Not every chapter is enormously long.
Yeah, not all chapters
and
are
we'll probably have
created
to
equally.
break up the next, chapters. So.
Gotcha. No problem at all. Okay, well, cool deal. Well, I guess if you guys have any specific questions that could be related to this particular chapter about Judaism and Christianity, feel free to put them in chat if you want to. We'll have time for a few questions if you have them. And if not, it's not a big deal. We can still come back, and next week we'll have... What is next week anyway? Let me see. Got your book. Here's the book right here. Guys, if you don't have it yet, and get the...
Monday night should be okay.
The Spanish version also. Both are on your screen now. And I just found out tonight that you actually have an actual Spanish website. I did not know that.
Creencia Judía.
That's cool.
Oh, you knew. You just forgot.
Probably so.
You're getting old
so.
like me.
Okay, so chapter 12. Oh, this is just in part 1. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, this part 2 is actually chapter 12. Introduction to Interpretation. And then 13 will be Techniques of Christian Interpretation. 14 is the 10 most commonly used proof texts.
Right. Each one of these maybe have to be broken down.
Okay.
So we'll see.
And then finally, last but not least, conclusions and questions. That'll be kind of fun as well.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. All right, so I'm looking. I want to see. If you guys have a question, be sure to tag at TaNaCh Talk in the chat. That way it'll show up in yellow for me, and I'll be able to spot it real easily. I scrolled through here already. I don't see any questions in the chat. So if the mods out there, if you have noticed, here's one right here. John Van Manen says, was Jesus Jewish?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Okay.
In other words, Jesus was Jewish, but if Jesus came back today, do you think he would go to any church of any denomination? Do you think he would go to a synagogue and wonder what in the world are those Christians thinking?
Yep.
I mean, people forget that the New Testament was written down by believing Christians.
Right.
Okay. The New Testament doesn't say what Jesus said. The New Testament says what Christians say he said. And so, yes, the Jesus we assume existed and assume is described in the Christian's New Testament was in fact Jewish. But like I said, that doesn't mean he knew anything Judaism. That doesn't mean that what he said was Jewish. It means that what he is quoted as saying is what Christians wrote that he said.
Right. There's nothing in the New Testament at all where Jesus basically commanded somebody to dictate anything. It was all 30, 40, 50 years later recollections. Maybe they had notes, who knows. But nowhere does Jesus say, hey, Timothy, write this down. Hey, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, write this down. So it doesn't exist. So, yeah, I'd have to agree if I believe that Jesus would be rolling over in his grave right now. And, yes, he is in a grave somewhere, just so you know. Okay, so...
And yeah, go ahead.
Moving another question from Rev Robbins.
Sure.
Are non-Christian, are secular egg hunts okay if it's if people are treating it as a secular holiday not related to the church at all?
And the problem is that why would they be doing an egg hunt at all except for as it's found in Christian denominations?
Because it's a cultural thing now.
Oh, good. Then why don't they do it in the middle of July?
Right. Well,
They are doing it as a way to reflect or mimic Christian
You may be right, but
rituals.
I do know personally. Like I was in construction for many years, and I've had a lot of customers who were like they had some Chinese customers, and they didn't even believe in Jesus at all, but they celebrate Christmas because it's a U.S. holiday, and you don't celebrate Christmas in July. You celebrate it when everybody else does. So I don't believe that everybody who celebrates. In fact, I actually know a Jewish family in Austin who actually celebrates some of the Jewish holidays, but they could care less. They don't even believe in the Bible. They just do it because it's a Jewish thing to do. And so
But if those same people were to do an egg hunt, which is what I think he was asking about,
right?
Even though it's a secular thing, would it be okay? The answer is no.
Okay.
It is no different than putting up a secular symbol of Christmas, like a Christmas tree.
Right. Right.
And by the way,
agreed.
Most Christians don't know this, but every single thing on a every single thing on a Christmas tree has very religious Christian theological meaning. Okay, they don't call it angel hair for nothing. Okay, the greenery, the fact that it's an evergreen, is like the eternal nature of Jesus or whatever.
Right.
Somewhere I have a list of what all the Christmas tree things mean, but they don't put them up in July. They put them up because they want to look or appear to be no different than their neighbors who are also doing it. Mm-hmm. It is simply wrong for a Jew to do a Christmas tree, and it would simply, even though it's a secular, you want to call it as secular as you want, I don't care. Okay, it would be no different than that for a Jewish family to do an Easter egg hunt. Easter egg. They're an egg hunt. Yeah, but everybody knows where it really comes from.
Right.
Okay.
That's very true.
By the way, Calm Kitty, in Russia they call it a New Year's tree. You have no idea how many immigrants to the United States, from Russia have a New Year's tree, and how I have tried to talk to them about how I understand what it is or was in Russia, but in the United States, it's a Christmas tree, no matter what you want to call it.
And using that logic, here's a really good point. There was I heard something a long time ago that this missionary guy went to Africa or somewhere where the people didn't have a lot of food, and they said it was considered a compliment in Africa to ask a woman, especially a large woman, how much she weighs, and then also how old she is, right? Well, just because it's okay there, when they come back to the United States, you can't ask people that because it is offensive. So just because it's acceptable to some cultures and it's not acceptable with this, you really can't cross the two. So point more validated through that alone, I think, as well, because you don't want to do those things that really are offensive to the culture which you support, so to speak, which would be, even if it's a secular Christmas or secular Easter or whatever, doing things that appear to be Christian in any form, even in appearance. I mean, I think in Proverbs it says, avoid the appearance of evil, and it does look like it's not on the holy side of things. So
they can call it what they want to. They can rationalize it any way they want to. Christmas trees are for Christmas, and egg hunts are for Easter, and but it's fun for the kids. Yeah, it's fun for the kids, but the kids aren't stupid either. They will, when they grow up, they will know what they had done.
Right.
By the way, Janice, thank you. You're right. I'm not planning anything for Wednesday night. Marcy does all that. So, yeah.
That's funny.
The funny thing about it is, I know this is terrible, but during the week of Passover, my main meal really is pizza. I take the matzah, okay? I take some kosher for Passover cheese and put it, on the matzah, and then I have, believe it or not, I have kosher for Passover ketchup. It's not kosher for Passover tomato sauce. It's not kosher for Passover pizza sauce. It's not it's ketchup. That's funny. And I put ketchup on it, and I put it in the microwave, and that's probably 60% of my meals through the week. And I love it.
That's cool. Okay, so
very simple taste.
Okay, so I was looking up a verse. That thing I just quoted about avoiding the appearance of evil was actually a New Testament statement, but it's still true.
Yeah, there's something in Judaism called Marit Ayin.
So in Psalm 97, 10 through 11, it says, "Ye that love the Lord hate evil."
Right.
Right. So, and if we know that Easter and Christianity is evil against Judaism altogether, and it really is, if we hate it, then why would we even have any part of it? So there's one. Then also Amos says, "Hate evil and love the good, and establish judgment." Right?
Absolutely.
So, right.
You know, people forget that Christians really talk a lot about, oh, God is love, love is God, God is love, 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 love. But they forget there are many passages, well, not many, but there are a few passages in the Bible that talk about what God hates.
Right.
God is not just one feeling.
True.
Okay. You know, God has jealousy. For I, God, am a jealous God. Okay.
Right.
God is not just one emotion. God runs the gamut of emotions in our simple human understanding, anthropomorphically. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like we might be wrapping up. So we got about 45
Yeah,
minutes.
matzah pizza.
That's good. All right. Well, Rabbi, with your permission, we'll go ahead and close out this show. And
absolutely.
Very good. It's been a pleasure seeing everybody. Be sure to get Rabbi Federow's book right there. It's at
Free Will is Not Jewish. Miriam, you're totally correct, and I don't see how anybody could say that free will isn't Jewish. I have set before you this day the blessing, life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore, choose life. But it's a choice.
Yep, it is.
You know, and God's right before Noah, and God saw the evil in man's heart, and God was repentant from having made man. Well, that implies we have enough free will that what we can do will surprise, or maybe not surprise, but will make God regret. Yeah. To me, that's a way of saying we have free will. But even if you just choose life, it's still a choice. We have the free will. God is hoping we'll choose life. God wants us to choose life, but our free will allows us to choose death, choose bad things. And it's 4 things, not 2.
Yeah.
Life, death, blessing, curse. So, at any rate.
Very good. Very good. Very welcome, John Van Manen. Awesome. Once again, big thanks to all the moderators out there.
Yeah, Pesach, a sweet Passover, and a happy and kosher Passover for everybody.
Very good, very good. And once again, thank you for the moderators out there. I really appreciate all y'all's doings and undoings. So, all right. We'll see you guys later, Rabbi. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you all.
You too. Thank you.
We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye. Peace. Bye.
Hello, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com. TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה